a day of divine silence. Holy Saturday is undoubtedly one of the most enigmatic days in all of Christian history. There are no visible miracles, no words from Jesus, no crowds. It's as if the entire world has stopped breathing for a moment. This day marks the silence of God. The voice that had healed, forgiven, taught, and comforted now remains silent in the darkness of a tomb. It is a day of mourning, but also of waiting. Everything seemed to have ended. Jesus, the Son of God, the promised Messiah, hung dead on a cross just one day before. His disciples were hiding, fearful, confused. What had happened to the promises? Where was the glory? The world seemed to have fallen into a night without dawn. But this silence is not empty. It is a silence filled with purpose. Sometimes God works in silence, in what is hidden, in what our eyes cannot see. Holy Saturday is a powerful reminder that even when everything seems lost, when we feel that God has gone silent, He is not absent. He is preparing something far greater than we can imagine. It is the silence before the symphony, the pause before the burst of light. In our lives, we also experience Holy Saturdays, moments when we feel that God does not answer, that our prayers vanish into the air. But this day teaches us that God's silence is not abandonment. It is the space where hope ripens, where faith is strengthened. Just as the grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies before bearing fruit, so did the body of Jesus rest in the darkness of the tomb so that new life could spring forth. This sacred day invites us to enter into that silence, to stop fighting, to trust, to wait, because although it may seem like nothing is happening, everything is happening. It is not a void, it is a mystery. When we think of Holy Saturday, many see it as just a space between two monumental events: the crucifixion on Good Friday and the resurrection on Sunday. However, this apparent void is, in reality, one of the most mysterious and profound moments in the Christian calendar. It is the day that does not shine with miracles nor glow with visible signs. It is the day of the invisible, of the silent work of God that escapes human sight. In that silence, something grand was being birthed. Heaven and earth seemed to be on pause, but the plan of redemption was still moving forward. Redemption did not stop with Jesus' death. It entered into a hidden, mysterious, spiritual phase. Humanity thought everything had ended, that the Messiah had failed. But in reality, Holy Saturday was the womb from which the resurrection would be born. It was the rest of the promise before its glorious fulfillment. The Church's liturgy celebrates it with solemnity, with stillness, with reverence. There is no Mass during the day, no grand manifestations. It is as if everything invites us to contemplate the mystery with humility, because the greatest mysteries do not always make noise. God's love, His faithfulness, His victory, often manifest in silence, in what is unseen. In our spiritual life, we also go through moments of apparent void. We pray and hear no answer. We seek God and do not feel His nearness. But Holy Saturday reminds us that this void is only apparent. In the invisible world, God is still at work. Sometimes He works in our hearts, transforming them, strengthening them, preparing them for what is to come. God has not abandoned the world, nor our history. He is simply acting from a deeper place. Holy Saturday is the proof that silence does not mean absence, that the hidden can also be sacred, that the mystery is not something that should distance us from God, but quite the opposite. It is an invitation to trust beyond what we understand, because not everything is lost when everything seems silent. Sometimes it is precisely there where the miracle is born. Jesus descended into hell. One of the most profound statements in the Apostles' Creed is this: He descended into hell. It is a phrase that may sound strange or even unsettling, but it contains a powerful and comforting truth. On Holy Saturday, while his body rested in the tomb, Jesus was not inactive. His soul, filled with divine life, descended to the realm of the dead. But he did not do so as just another soul. He came as the victor, arriving with authority, as the light that penetrates the deepest darkness. The term hell here does not refer to the eternal hell of condemnation, but to Sheol or Hades, the place where the souls of the righteous and the unrighteous waited. It was the state of the dead before heaven was opened. Jesus descended there to announce his victory. He went to seek the patriarchs, the prophets, the righteous of all times who awaited redemption with hope. Adam, Eve, Abraham, Moses, David. All those who believed in God's promises were witnesses to the arrival of the Savior. This descent was not a passive gesture but a glorious breakthrough. Let us imagine the scene. The light of Christ entering the darkness, breaking chains, illuminating faces that had waited for centuries. It was a triumphal procession in the invisible world. Jesus went to free the captives, to proclaim that death had been defeated and that the kingdom of God had already been inaugurated. This mystery reveals something fundamental. There is no place so dark where Christ cannot enter. There is no abyss he will not descend to out of love. Not even death has the final word. Christ has gone to the depths of human pain to redeem it all. His love reaches even where we no longer see hope. Therefore, when we find ourselves in darkness, when we feel like we have descended to the depths of our own personal hell, whether it is pain, loneliness, guilt, or fear, let us remember that Christ has already been there. And not only has he been there, but he has triumphed. In the silence of Holy Saturday, an eternal cry was heard deep within the human soul. Rise! I am with you. Heaven in waiting. Holy Saturday was not only a day of waiting for the earth, but also for heaven. Let us imagine for a moment the amazement of the angels, the anticipation of the heavenly choirs, the sacred pause in eternity. They who had witnessed the creation of the world, who had seen the Word incarnate in the womb of Mary, now witnessed something never seen before. The Son of God, dead and buried. The entire heaven held its breath, awaiting the culminating moment of the divine plan. The angels did not intervene. They did not descend to move the stone. They did not tear the temple veil. They observed with reverence the great mystery unfolding. For this work was solely of God. No creature, no matter how glorious, could partake in the power of the resurrection. Only the Father, in silence and eternity, would raise his Son in glory. This heaven in waiting is a profound image of what also happens in our lives. There are moments when everything seems suspended, on pause. We wait for an answer, a change, a miracle. And in the meantime, heaven also waits with us. It is not a passive wait, but a wait filled with hope, trust, and certainty. The angels accompany our hope, even though we do not see them. The story of salvation is woven with moments like these. Abraham waited decades for a son. Moses waited 40 years in the desert. Israel waited centuries for the Messiah. And now, heaven itself waits with loving silence for the dawn of the resurrection. This heavenly Holy Saturday reminds us that everything worthwhile takes time. That even in heaven, there are sacred pauses where glory has not yet been revealed, but is being nurtured. On this day, we learn to wait not as one who resigns, but as one who knows the promise will be fulfilled. Faith is not just believing when everything shines, but also when everything is silent. Just as the angels awaited the Father's command, we too wait in faith, knowing that what is coming is greater than we imagine. Because when heaven waits, it is because something eternal is about to happen. Mary, the woman of silent faith, in the midst of the bewilderment, the weeping of the disciples, and the confusion that reigned among the followers of Jesus, there is one figure who remains firm, Mary, his mother. Holy Saturday finds her in the deepest silence of her soul, experiencing the greatest pain a mother can endure, the death of her son. And yet, in the midst of that open wound, Mary does not crumble. Her faith, silent but powerful, sustains not only her heart but also the heart of the church that is being born. She does not run. She does not demand answers. She does not allow herself to be swept away by panic. Mary contemplates, waits, trusts. Her silence is more eloquent than 1,000 words. She, who had treasured the words of the angel and the mysteries of her son from his birth, now holds within her the hope of the promise. You will not allow your Holy One to see corruption. Psalm 16 verse 10. Mary did not know exactly how the resurrection would unfold, but she knew that God does not lie, that her son was the Son of the Most High, and that his destiny was not the grave but glory. This moment of Mary is one of the most beautiful in all Christian history because it teaches us how to live when everything seems lost. She is a model of how to maintain faith when there are no visible signs, when the miracle has not yet arrived, when only silence remains. On Holy Saturday, Mary becomes the believing heart of the church. While everyone doubts, she waits. We too face Holy Saturdays in our lives. Losses, suffering, moments when we do not understand God's plans. And there, Mary invites us to trust, not to flee from pain, but to embrace it with hope. To keep silence not as one who surrenders, but as one who waits with love. Her example reminds us that it is not necessary to understand everything in order to believe. True love knows how to wait in the darkness. Holy Saturday is also Mary's day, a day to imitate her silence, her strength, her steadfast tenderness. For in the heart of a grieving mother, God kept the living flame of faith, the church in the silence of the soul. Holy Saturday is also the quietest day for the church. There are no masses during the day. The Eucharist is not celebrated. The altars are bare. The tabernacle is empty. Everything is suspended, as if the soul of the church is contained in a deep sigh, in an act of total contemplation. It is a unique day because there is no visible action, only spiritual waiting. The church enters a kind of universal retreat, a pause that is not inactivity, but recollection. In this profound silence, the church joins Christ in the tomb, not with despair, but with a mature faith. It is as if the bride of Christ also dies with him, to rise with him in the holy night. In the silence of Holy Saturday, the church remembers her buried Lord, but also prepares for the great celebration of Easter. This pause is an essential part of the journey. One cannot reach the resurrection without going through the cross, and without stopping at the tomb. Today, the church does not preach with words. She preaches with her silence, a silence that shouts faith, a silence that tells us, trust, wait, not everything is over. It is the silence of the soul that has learned to rest in God even when it does not understand, when it does not see, when it does not feel. For mature faith does not need noise, signs, or explanations. It only needs to trust that God is faithful to his promises. On this day, we are invited to be part of that silence, to take a pause from our fast-paced rhythm, to enter, even for a moment, into the stillness of the sacred, to recognize that, in the Christian life, we also need these times of recollection, waiting, and fruitful darkness. Because in silence, the soul hears the voice of God more clearly. The church teaches us that not everything needs to be resolved immediately, that there is immense value in waiting on God, in trusting without seeing. Just as Jesus went into the silence of the tomb, the church also enters into the silence of the soul, so that in the Paschal night, it can shout with joy, Christ is risen, the value of inner silence. We live in a noisy era. Social media, the news, constant messages. Everything pushes us to be always connected, always talking, always reacting. Yet, Holy Saturday offers us a gift that is becoming increasingly rare: inner silence. It is not just about refraining from speaking, but about making space in the heart to listen, to reflect, to be with God without distractions. Inner silence is one of the purest forms of prayer. It is that moment when we stop asking, planning, controlling, and simply surrender to the presence of the Lord. Holy Saturday is the perfect day to practice this silence. There are no masses during the day, no liturgical celebrations. The Church invites us, by example, to turn off the external voices and open ourselves to the whisper of God. In that silence, the soul becomes sensitive. It begins to perceive truths that noise hides from us. We realize how much we depend on control, on quick answers, on intense emotions. But in silence, we learn to trust beyond what we feel. We discover that we don't need to understand everything to love, that God does not always respond with words. Sometimes he responds with his peace. Silence is also the fertile ground of the Spirit. In it, God works deeply. He heals wounds, strengthens faith, inspires decisions. That's why Holy Saturday is not a lost day. It is an inner day where the soul has the opportunity to reconnect with itself and its Creator. Many saints understood this. Saint John of the Cross, Saint Teresa, Saint Ignatius. All of them lived silence as a fire that purifies and ignites divine love. Today, more than ever, we need to recover that silence, not just as a spiritual practice, but as a refuge for the soul. Sometimes the miracle does not arrive shouting. It comes when everything is calm. It comes when we are quiet enough to hear it. And in that silence, God does not only comfort, he also resurrects. Holy Saturday teaches us that not everything must be said, that not everything must be done. Sometimes the greatest things happen in what is hidden, in what is silent, in what is invisible. And there, in the deepest part of the soul, Christ is at work. A day that reflects our life. Holy Saturday is not just a date on the liturgical calendar. It is, in many ways, a profound image of human life. We all, at some point, go through a personal Holy Saturday. That space between what we have lost and what has not yet come, between the pain of a cross and the joy of a promised resurrection. It is that time when hope feels distant, silence overwhelms, and faith is the only thing that can sustain us. Many times our life resembles a closed tomb. A loss, a betrayal, a diagnosis, prolonged loneliness. And, like the disciples, we don't understand what is happening. We feel paralyzed with the impression that God is silent. But Holy Saturday reveals to us that this silence is not empty, but gestation. That in the apparent inactivity, God is working deeply, preparing a miracle that we cannot yet see. This holy day represents that already, but not yet. Jesus has already defeated sin on the cross, but his victory has not yet been fully revealed. So too with us. We know that Christ loves us, that he has power, that he has promised to be with us, but many times we do not see the fruit yet. And this is where authentic faith comes in. The faith that walks in the dark, the one that doesn't depend on signs, the one that believes simply because it trusts in the heart of God. Holy Saturday reminds us that there is no cross without resurrection, but also that there is no resurrection without waiting. It is necessary to go through the tomb, through the silence, through the not knowing, so that the soul can fully open to the divine work. Just as a seed needs darkness and soil before it blooms, so too do we need those Holy Saturday moments to grow. And the most beautiful thing is that God does not leave us alone on this day. He has lived the silence, he has experienced the waiting, he has known the absence. That is why he understands us, accompanies us, strengthens us. Holy Saturday unites us to Christ in the most human aspect of our experience. Uncertainty, fragility, waiting. But it also promises us that the third day will come, that the tomb is not the end, that the pain will be redeemed, that life will overcome. That is why this day reflects our life, but also our destiny, the glory of the resurrection, the silent hope of the disciples. Holy Saturday was also a test for the disciples. That group who had left everything to follow Jesus was now hidden, afraid, with their souls torn by confusion. The cross had destroyed their dreams. The Master, in whom they had placed all their hopes, lay in a tomb. What had seemed like a path of victory had turned into a total defeat. But in the midst of all that pain, hope did not completely extinguish. Though fearful, though silent, though with hearts full of questions, the disciples did not completely flee. They remained, though enclosed. There was a weak, almost imperceptible flame still burning in their hearts. And that flame was silent hope. A hope that did not shout, that did not proclaim victory, but also did not go out. It was the purest faith, the one that survives even when everything seems lost. It is easy to have hope when everything is going well, when promises are quickly fulfilled, when miracles happen. But Holy Saturday shows us another type of hope, the one that withstands the night, the one that stands firm in the silence, the one that does not understand but still believes. That silent hope was what kept the first Christian community alive. It was the invisible thread that united them in waiting, and it was also the bridge that led them to the Easter morning. Isn't that also what we live? How many times do we not understand what God is doing, but still keep trusting? How many times do we feel hidden, without answers, with wounded souls, but we decide to keep waiting? That is the bravest hope, the one that doesn't need applause, the one that doesn't give up, the one that, like a seed underground, is alive even though it cannot be seen. The disciples were not heroes that Saturday. They were simply human, like us, with fear, pain, uncertainty. But their faithfulness in waiting was enough, because Jesus did not ask for perfection, but trust. And that hope, however small it was rewarded with the glory of the resurrection. This point invites us to embrace that same hope. No matter how weak your faith may seem today, it doesn't matter if you are in a holy Saturday of your life. If you remain, if you trust, if you wait, the risen one will come to meet you. The pain and hope of Holy Saturday. Holy Saturday is a day of silence and deep reflection, a day in which the Christian people face an apparent void. Jesus, who died on the cross the day before, lies in the tomb, and the hearts of the believers are filled with sadness and confusion. It is a day of waiting, a day when hope seems suspended in the air, as there are no visible signs of the resurrection, and the disciples live in mourning, despair, and bewilderment. But this day, though dark and silent, is crucial in the history of salvation. In its apparent inactivity, Holy Saturday is a bridge between death and life, between sacrifice and victory. It is a time of reflection in which, unknowingly, the disciples prepare for the marvel that is about to come, the resurrection of Christ. It is a day of faith, of trust that, although the circumstances do not show it, something great is about to happen. It is the moment when the light of hope shines most brightly, though invisible, reminding us that in times of silence and pain, God is still working, acting in the depths of our hearts, preparing the ground for the new life that is coming. For Christians, Holy Saturday invites us to enter into that same silence of God, where there are no immediate answers, where peace is not something that can be touched but is felt deep within the soul. It is a day that invites us to reflect on the mystery of redemption and the need to live our faith with patience, awaiting the final triumph over evil, sin, and death. In the liturgy of Holy Saturday, the Church reminds us that the silence of this day is not a sign of defeat, but of the confident waiting for a tomorrow full of light. As in Christian life, sometimes suffering and pain seem endless, but the promise of the resurrection, the triumph of life over death, assures us that God's glory is near. This day is also an invitation to personal meditation, a moment to look inward and reconnect with our own hope. While we may not know how God will act in our lives, Holy Saturday teaches us that even in the darkness, the promise of a new dawn remains alive. Preparation for the resurrection, the Easter Vigil. The Easter Vigil, which begins on the night of Holy Saturday, marks the beginning of the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. This is the culmination of the Christian mystery, the act that gives meaning to the entire history of salvation. The Vigil is a liturgy that invites us to move from silence and darkness to light and joy, a journey that reflects the transition from sin to redemption, from death to life. The liturgy of the Easter Vigil begins with the blessing of the new fire, which symbolizes the light of Christ that, like a flame, dispels the darkness of sin and death. This fire, which is lit outside the church, becomes the Paschal candle, which, during the celebration, is processed throughout the church, illuminating the path to the altar. The Paschal candle is the symbol of the risen Christ, the light that conquers darkness, and it is lit with the hope that, like the fire, the life of Jesus spreads throughout the world. One of the most beautiful features of the Easter Vigil is its solemn atmosphere and the deep sense of expectation. The hymns and readings from the Old Testament recall how God, throughout history, has been preparing humanity for the coming of the Messiah. Through the stories of creation, the Exodus, Abraham's sacrifice, and the salvation promised by the prophets, the Church invites us to meditate on the wonders that God has performed in the past, preparing us for the miracle that will occur at the end of the Vigil, the resurrection of Jesus. After the readings, the climax of the Vigil arrives with the announcement of the resurrection. The priest, exalted by the joy of this moment, proclaims with great fervor, "Christ is risen! He is truly risen!" This is the moment when the sadness of Holy Saturday is transformed into the great joy of Easter, and the Christian people burst into praise, celebrating Christ's definitive victory over death. Easter is not just a historical event. It is a mystery that is lived in the heart of every believer, an invitation to experience the victory of Christ in our lives, in our suffering, and in our hope. The Easter Vigil also marks a moment of renewal for the faithful. Those who have prepared during Lent and participated in the rite of baptism are officially welcomed into the Christian community. The baptismal water, which at other times represents the purification of sin, tonight becomes the sign of new life, for the baptized, like Christ, pass from death to life. It is a reminder that, through faith, we become participants in the resurrection of Christ. The atmosphere surrounding the Easter Vigil is one of transformation. The Church, which in the darkness of Holy Saturday lived through mourning and waiting, is now filled with light, music, and joy, for the resurrection of Christ is the reason for our faith and the foundation of our hope. In this liturgical act, Christians renew their commitment to the risen Christ, the Savior who has given us new life. The Easter Vigil is not just a liturgical event. It is a reminder that the resurrection of Christ is a present event that invites us to renew our lives, to abandon everything that binds us to death, sin, and suffering, to live with Him in the glory of the new creation. The Vigil is the passage through